name is Ellie Gettinger. Hi, welcome to Conversation Starters. My name is Ellie Gettinger, and I'm the Education Director at Jewish Museum Milwaukee. This week, we opened Scrapyard, Innovators of Recycling. This exhibit explores the history of recycling nationally, and we did a specific study into Wisconsin recyclers and scrapyards. As part of this exhibit, which runs through January 30th, we really wanted to explore sustainability in Wisconsin and what recycling and zero waste and all of these different kind of buzzwords in terms of green living and the green economy mean in our state, and what we can be doing to help the situation, how we can better fulfill the vision of being sustainable. And in doing that, we've reached out to a number of community leaders. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Hartsig, who's the director of WasteCap Resources, and he's going to share with us his more than 20 years of experience in the sustainable universe. 4 of those years have been working on zero waste specifically. And so, Dan, thanks so much for joining me today, and welcome.
Thank you.
We have so much to discuss, but first, let's start by just talking about WasteCap. I'm not sure that everyone who's watching is familiar with WasteCap and what they do. And so I'd love to get a little bit of a better sense of WasteCap and its role in Milwaukee.
Sure. So WasteCap Resource Solutions is a statewide organization. I mean, we work statewide, primarily in Wisconsin. They're little known fact, there used to be WasteCaps actually all over the U.S. And over time they've gradually disappeared, or they morphed into something else. Most recently, WasteCap Nebraska became the Nebraska Recycling Council. But WasteCap has been around for 25 years now, supposedly 26. I just found an old document that said we're actually maybe around a little bit longer than we thought we were. And that's what happens when you clean out your office. But yeah, so we work nowadays, about 50-50 with business and construction work. So on the business side, we're generally aiming for zero waste, whether that's someone who's just trying to figure out how much waste they even are producing. A critical piece in figuring out how to get to zero waste is knowing what you produce. And then the other side on construction is primarily with diverting waste from the landfill. So less so on waste reduction and more so on recycling and reuse. And so our work takes us all over the state, and we work with primarily large and mid-sized companies and large and mid-sized projects, construction or demolition projects.
What does, in terms of zero waste, I think when we hear that, all of us are like, how is that even possible? What does zero waste look like? How can a company possibly manage that? What are they doing?
Right. The holy grail of zero waste is you don't even have a recycling bin, right? Like you don't have a trash bin, you don't have a recycling bin, you produce zero waste. That kind of definition is pretty unattainable. So what most people define zero waste as is 90 or 95% or more diversion from landfill, and also generally avoiding waste to energy and definitely the environment. So you're trying not to do the worst things you possibly can do with your trash. And then from there, some definitions say, well, it's just how much you recycle. And others say it's how much you recycle, but more importantly, it's how much you reuse and how much you reduce. So if you're out a way to change your business operation to say use half as much paper as you used to, you very much should take credit for the fact that you are using 50% less in your calculation for waste avoidance, right? Because otherwise, sometimes people take on a zero waste initiative. They only look at how much they're recycling versus how much they're throwing away, and use that to figure out their diversion rate. And they do something which reduces their amount of paper that they use. But that was paper they would have gone into recycling, and now their diversion rate actually goes down. Because now they have more trash to recycling comparatively.
Because
there are, I could get even farther into the weeds. Yes, it's complex. And when someone says they are zero waste, you very much should ask them, what do they think that means? because
And in terms
it may not be
of
what you
that
think it means.
process, how much of that is having companies source where their materials are coming from, so that your packaging and all of that stuff is coming from sustainable sources as well? Is that
Right.
part of the process?
That is absolutely part of the process of what we try to do. So not all definitions of zero waste extend outside the business itself. For example, you could look at some of the EPA's definitions, or like UL Laboratories, their definition of zero waste. It doesn't extend outside the business itself. There's a certification system called the True Zero Waste certification, run by the U.S. Green Building Council. And it looks not just at the minimum requirement is how much waste are you diverting, but it ranks you based on how much you affect your community, and how much you affect your suppliers, and how much you affect your customers. So it's upstream, downstream, and around your building. And so we aim for that, because that obviously is you're doing the most good,
In terms of that process, working with builders, is there, a kind of, and I just think about driving around all over Wisconsin right now. We are in prime building season. It's, nearing the end, and you see so many dumpsters full of whatever is coming out, or, on the sides of the roads, you see all of the concrete turned over. What is the kind of percentages of that ends up landfilled versus going back into some sort of reusable scrap? When you see those full dumpsters, are most of those then being sorted and picked through, or is this a question of varies?
It varies considerably by the project. Waste is an incredibly complex topic in general. When I got into it 4 years ago, I thought it would be easy. I went from a world where I was doing sustainability from an energy, water, land, health, and waste perspective, and I was just going to focus on waste. And I'm like, oh great, I have all the tools I need.
I'm narrowed in. I don't have to do all this.
Did not know what I was doing. Once I got into it, I realized how much more that there is. And I'm going to digress one more time, because
this is what this is all about. It's the conversation.
All right, great.
Questions allowed.
When we look for interns, the university system, we primarily use the university system to get our interns, and they have you fill out a survey, and they have you go through, and they have you check the boxes on the majors that would apply to what you do. And I have a really hard time not checking almost every single box, because in some way or another they deal with waste, whether it's from the economics side, whether it's from the logistics, whether it's from the building materials or material product design, whether it's from psychology, sociology, education, law, policy. I can't think of something that doesn't touch on waste in some way or another.
Sports management.
So, sports management. Well, your team is still. You have gear. You have supplies. You're running a business, so every business has its waste. If you have waste, you have inefficiency. Going back to your question, though, are all those dumpsters going to landfill? Not all of them. Are many of them going to landfill? Yes, probably in the neighborhood of 60 to 70% of it is going to landfill on the projects that actually try. On the projects that barely try at all to recycle, but they actually try to recycle, they'll probably hit in the 50 to 60% range. The ones that really try hard will get in the 75% diversion range, maybe higher. But it's really dependent on the project. If you're doing an interior renovation, stuff, if it's painted, stained, sealed, or treated, it's not going to be recyclable. So your drywall, your wood, if it's painted, stained, or sealed, it's not recyclable. So if you think about interior finishes, a lot of the plastics, the wood, the stuff, it's just not recyclable.
Really, they can't do anything with stained wood in order to.
You can reuse it. You can refinish it, but it's not generally recyclable, because once you think about it this way, think about it from the manufacturer's perspective. They are producing a product. They want their product to be made out of materials that are clean, that are predictable, that are not hiding any harmful substances. If you source from sealed, you've got all sorts of things that could have been done to that wood, chopped up in with everything else. You don't know what you're getting as your product, and you could be potentially passing out a potentially hazardous product to your clients. Not that what people already do to their products isn't already hazardous, but it's just even more stuff you have to worry about. So they want a clean material stream, and that's why a lot of that doesn't allow things to be recycled.
So as this is one of those areas where there's so many people doing home renovations right now. There is limited things you can do, but you can look for people who could reuse your wood or countertops or any of that stuff. Is there anything within the realm that you're like, this is something that's not being recycled unless you have a builder that's really conscientious that people should just know? Anything metal, I would guess, is
anything. Pretty much anything metal will get recycled because you throw it into a furnace and all the bad stuff burns off and you get metal out of it. So, and metal has high value, always has high value.
Make sure your builders are pulling that stuff out at least.
Certainly. Concrete and brick, that's easily recycled. Even if some of it's painted, you can recycle it. Wood is where you start to get into difficulty. Drywall is one of those things we'd love to be able to recycle more. They recycle drywall, used drywall, so painted and sealed drywall. In other countries, the U.S. does not. Companies.
What do they do with it in other countries?
They put it through a process that strips the outside layer, so it strips off the paper that's painted and stuff like that. That's all removed, and then the drywall itself gets recycled because the gypsum inside drywall is like 99.9% recycled. It's the second most recyclable material next to glass, something like that. You can be recycled infinite times, basically. But
is this a workforce issue in America that the cost of stripping it's just a technology?
It's a legal issue.
Oh,
people got so scared by asbestos, and legitimately so, by asbestos lawsuits in the 80s that they refused to go anywhere near drywall because in the 70s and the 60s, drywall had asbestos in it, or very often did. And so American companies just won't go near it, even though they know the same company will use the processes in Canada, and there it's fine, but they will not sell that material to the US, and they will not do it in the US. So
this is a question of advocacy that American
legal,
consumers
right?
need to get out there and say, hey, we could be doing something with the drywall that is going straight into our landfills. Oh, that's so interesting. We get down rabbit holes quickly. There's so many other things that WasteCap does that I really wanted to get into. One of the things is you do these energy audits with companies. It's my understanding that you did an energy audit with the state of Wisconsin.
Waste audits.
Waste audit, sorry, not an energy audit.
Okay. And Wisconsin does waste characterization studies. There are many different types of waste auditing, but basically what a waste audit is looking in your trash and finding out
which some people really enjoy doing that.
Some people really enjoy doing that. I think this touches on one of our biggest difficulties is that it's really hard to tell people that think they're doing a good job that they're not, or that they think that they're recycling and they think they're diverting waste, that they probably should go look, because honestly, about 25% of probably what's going into any school, office building, institution, residential trash bin is probably recyclable. And about 10 to 15% or sometimes 20% of what's going into the recycling bin is not recyclable. And that causes problems for the whole recycling system, drives up the cost of recycling to get the trash out of it. It destroys and damages recyclable products. So yeah, getting people to look at their waste and actually take it apart, do the dumpster dive, figure out what they're throwing away and what they're recycling, and getting the right stuff in the right bin is a big first step. So the state of Wisconsin does their own studies. What we did, and probably what you heard about, because we don't do those studies, or haven't been asked to do those studies yet. But what we did do is we took the data from that, because we know so many things, so many people in so many areas, right? We know the people who do Feeding America. We know people who are in waste to energy. We know people who are in composting. And we know the landfill side, and we know the data. So what we could do is, around about a year or two ago, I realized, hey, wait a minute, I can start connecting these dots and just theoretically say, okay, Wisconsin, what if we never threw out any of our organics? What if we sent all of our organics, that's our food waste, our tree branches, and our, all the stuff from the yard. What if we magically made it go to the highest and best use? So if you've ever seen the EPA's highest and best use of organic waste triangle, it's like the first thing you should do is reduce, right? And then you should go to feed people. Then you should go to feed animals. Then you should go to compost, and then you should produce energy with it. So basically, I mean, there's more to it than that, but that's the tough one. So what if we actually sent the materials to where it needed to go? And the results were pretty shocking. So Wisconsin throws out about 482,000 tons of food every year.
That is a crazy big number.
It's a crazy big number.
I mean, 480,000 pounds of food sounds insane.
Right.
And then you're multiplying that times 2,000 tons.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's tons with a T. 168,000 tons of yard waste and 220,000 tons of compostable paper. Wow. If you put that in garbage trucks, if you fill garbage trucks with that stuff, be 58,000 garbage trucks, Jeez. Which is bumper to bumper. You could go from Madison to Milwaukee to Green Bay, back down to Madison through basically Appleton. And you'd make a complete triangle of bumper to bumper garbage trucks. And every year. So if that didn't go into a hole in the ground, and I know how much time have we got?
No, we're good. We're good on time. Don't worry, you're good.
Okay. But if it didn't go in a hole in the ground, and I was using stats from pre-pandemic, where Feeding America was saying we need 52,000 tons of food to feed Wisconsin every year. And Feeding America gets half of that, basically. Mm-hmm. So if at about 10% of what we throw away was edible at the time of disposal. I'm not saying like, something you dropped on the floor or something you ate half of, but like completely edible food. We would only need, where is it? Hold on, I'm flipping through some stats.
So, like there's so many numbers
slides. Here. Yeah, it's a lot of really big numbers, right? So to meet Wisconsin's hunger need, we'd only need 5% of the food that we throw away. So that 480,000 ton number. 5% of that would eliminate Wisconsin's hunger.
And when you're talking about those kinds of food numbers, is a lot of that is there a bigger chunk of that's coming from grocery stores and
grocery stores, restaurants? There is upstream too. Like it's not just people in their houses throwing stuff away. Sometimes when you see these numbers, you think, oh, it's just people in their houses. No, there's waste at every step of the process when it comes to food. There's waste in the farmer's field. There's waste in the truck to the store, to the packing plant. There's waste in the packing plant. There's waste as it goes to the store. There's waste before it gets to your house. So there's waste all along the journey.
I think when people think about organic materials like this, they're like, yeah, well, so it's going into the landfill, but it will compost after a while. Or can you?
Extremely long while. Like food that, think of it this way, the way we designed landfills before, back in the day, a landfill was a dump. People would just go and they'd dump stuff in the ground and it would sit there and it would smell and birds and stuff would come along and animals would come along and it was a nasty, dangerous place. And that's a lot like the way a lot of the world handles their waste in the world. in the US, we've moved on to a system where it's not one big, huge open cesspit. Every single day, they fill in cells in the landfill, small areas, and then they cover it up. And then they fill in another one, and they cover it up, and they fill in another one, and they cover it up. When they cover it up, they pack it down. It's in the best interest of the landfill to pack it down as hard as possible. So they have no airspace. No airspace means there's no room for aerobic digestion. There's no room for oxygen to get in, or if there is any oxygen, it gets eaten up really quickly. And so what goes into a landfill is basically sealed in a time capsule, pretty much. There's some anaerobic digestion of organics, which breaks down into methane, which turns into an extremely harmful climate-destroying gas, and which is it's 100 times worse than CO2. If you left an apple to decompose in the sun, it would decompose. It would release CO2. But if you put it in an airtight box, it decomposes into methane, which is way worse.
And what's the time differential? Like the decomposition rates, it's years difference.
Hundreds of years.
Yeah. Hundreds of years.
Yeah. So food and stuff like that would be, they've dug up landfills from the 50s and 60s that had, identifiable food in it. It's not perfectly even all the way through, but yes, there are definitely areas where particular lack of oxygen, you can still find stuff.
So we're putting things in landfills that are going to make a deadly gas and are not then being either eaten or used for energy or field improvement, in terms of.
Landfill companies will say, hey, but we capture that gas. Some of them do. And we produce energy out of it. Yes, you can burn it and produce energy. It's like the least efficient way of getting energy out of the organics you could possibly do. So how I mentioned that hierarchy? Part of it goes to feed humans and feed animals. Part of it is go to produce energy. Well, if we took the food waste that has BTU value, that has energy production value to it, and we took all the food waste that we could, which is about 41% of our food waste, we could produce about 614 billion BTUs. Which sounds billion BTUs, which sounds like a huge amount.
It does.
It's really not. Unfortunately, Wisconsin has. I was really hoping to have a bigger number there because Wisconsin has no natural fuel sources, natural fossil fuel sources. So all of our energy we produce, we're paying people in other states. So that's money that leaves our state and never comes back to pay for it. And it's actually been something that the governor and the lieutenant governor have mentioned several times in their major issues is they want to try to develop more sources of energy inside Wisconsin so we keep our money inside Wisconsin. But yeah, so 614 billion BTUs, it's less than 1% of our annual electrical demand.
Oh. So, not exactly the numbers you want there.
Not the numbers I wanted there, but it is.
But it offsets
still huge.
Something.
Yeah, it's still huge. So there's that.
Would it take? And I know that I have friends in Minneapolis, and they have, in the way that they have their blue bin for recycling, they also have a brown bin for compost. What are the holdups in getting kind of citywide compost?
Sure.
Or state, compost going through municipal areas.
Right. Compost operations, and I love how you segued into that because that's like the third thing, like heal the earth. So we in this study we did for the Wisconsin Integrated Resource Management Council, we looked at who could you feed with the food, how much energy could you produce, and how much could you heal the earth? Because we're losing topsoil at a rate of 1% of our farmland every year.
That's crazy.
And we're in 2014 we were at 30% farm loss in Wisconsin, basically farms going fallow because they're unproductive,
Mm.
and they can't. They've used all their chemical fertilizers, everything just burned out the earth, and that soil is no longer productive because they've killed everything living in it. And we're losing about 1% every year. If we took the remaining food and the remaining organics, which was 259,000 tons of food and 389,000 tons of organics, plus the 65,000 tons of digestate we would have gotten from our biodigesters, we would produce about 230,000 tons of compost every year, which would stop degradation on about a little less than 1% of our non-degraded conventional farms. So the organic farms are doing fine. It's the conventional farms that are burning through their soil. We'd be able to save about 65,000 acres of Wisconsin farmland if we sent it all to composting. Now, what are the holdups? It's hard. It's in general somewhat hard to separate food waste from non-food waste. It takes a lot of education. People don't put the stickers and the plastics and don't mix it all in there. Like, it has to be stuff that can completely degrade. The scale of the operation is somewhat difficult. It takes up a lot of room to do massive composting operations. There are massive composting operations in Wisconsin, but there's only like 3 or 4 of them. There is the question of, it's another set of hauling. It's another set of trucks, right? So you've got your recycling truck and you've got your trash truck. Well, now you'd also have a compost truck. Now, granted, if a third of your waste is going to recycling and a third of your waste is going to food, you're only producing a third of your trash. And what we found is at our house, because we compost, is that I can afford to go an entire month without having my garbage can picked up. Because A, I'm not actually producing that much landfill trash, but B, it also doesn't smell.
Right.
And it doesn't attract stuff because there's no organics in it. But anyway, so part of it's a quality issue, part of it's a systems issue. Organic waste is definitely the heaviest thing in your trash bin. And one of the difficult things that we've tried to work through with various companies is like, okay, how do you reduce the weight of that organic waste so that you can make it economically viable to transport it more than like 20 miles, or not even more than 20 miles, like more than 5 miles. So that's a big thing too, is the weight.
So as we're consumers and individuals figuring out this kind of miasma of all of these different things we can potentially do, what are the things that you recommend kind of first that individuals can take on in terms of being more sustainable, and then also in terms of advocating for community change and stuff like that?
Sure. I would, for yourself, I would take a look in your garbage.
Do your own waste audit.
Do your own waste audit. It doesn't take much. You can just look at it. You don't even have to dig in it, honestly. Just start to think about it and start to think about what you're buying. Because when we talk to companies, we actually don't go to them and say recycle more. We go to them and say buy less. If you can avoid buying trash that people are selling you, that's less trash than that you have to throw away. So don't buy trash if you can avoid it. Because also, why are you buying trash?
Why are you buying trash?
Spending money to buy trash.
So that's like thinking about the boxes and the packaging and all of those other pieces that go into your everything that we buy.
Everything, right? Yeah, if you can avoid taking material in, you'll have less to deal with going out. So that's reduction is really the biggest thing. You can recycle all you want; it's not going to solve the problem. Reduction is where you need to get to. Plus, it saves you so much more money. The next thing, how can you advocate? I would say look around your neighborhood, look around your office, look around your school, and just ask questions. Why aren't you recycling? What might be able to change in order for that to happen? Who do I need to talk to influence? Sometimes it's just people don't have enough time to deal with it, and the CEO of a company is not thinking about it. But if somebody comes into his office and says, hey, why aren't we recycling? Could we recycle? That might be a thing. It could save us a lot of money. Actually recycling won't, but buying less will definitely save you a lot of money. That's something you could do. I mean, WasteCap has been around for 25 years. The last 15, we have managed to divert. In 2020, we passed the 1 million ton diversion mark. And every bit of help we can get in that, whether it's through companies hiring us to do waste or grants or anything like that, or just donations to WasteCap, really help us move that needle. So look for organizations that are doing good work, support them. If you can't, get your own company to reduce the trash it's buying, or looking around your school or looking around your home. So
thank you so much, Dan. This has been a pleasure. If you want more information about WasteCap, you can go to their website. It's wastecap.org. Am I
yep.
right about that?
.org is the critical bit.
.org. WasteCap.
But in .com, it won't get you there.
That will not. We'll be back again next month with another conversation starter where we're going to be talking to Karen Sieg from Recycling Connections. And in the meantime, join us to come check out Scrapyard Innovators of Recycling and learn a little bit about how the recycling industry evolved from its immigrant roots to today. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again.
Thank you so much. And we got to set up an appointment to go visit.
Yes.
Scrapyard.
See, I'm going to have Dan come in with the WasteCap team.